So a linguistics professor was talking to his students about language, and he said, in English, a negative is a negative. A double negative is a positive. In Russian, a double negative is a negative. But there is no language on the planet in which a double positive is a negative. And a voice in the back of the room said, yeah, right. It's important as we look into the book of Exodus to know this is a tribal language. This is a language that sort of evolved around campfires and in caves. And much of what we read was passed around sometimes for generations, sometimes for hundreds of years before it was actually recorded. And that's not to say that the stories are not true or not accurate, but sometimes images are used in ways that meant something at one point which aren't exactly the same later. And so I talked about numbers and how numbers in Hebrew oftentimes are used sort of as terms rather than precise mathematical points, in contrast to Greek, whereas Greek is very exact, very scientific. Hebrew is very much just sort of artistic, sort of just flowing. It's sort of like creating a picture. And so as we move through the events that happened through the lives of the Israelites, one of the things that intrigues me and that I like to try to do is to try to imagine what exactly it was that they did experience or what it was that they did see, or how would that be something that maybe we would see in a different way today. So I want you to turn with me to the 12th chapter, or the 13th chapter, of Exodus. And I'm going to talk a little bit about something which happens after they have fled Egypt. They're just on their way out the door. They're kind of fleeing the area. And the Passover has just happened. And the Egyptians have said, yeah, go, not only go, but get out, don't come back. We don't want to ever see you again. And so they take off. And in the 13th chapter, it gives them a bunch of instructions about leaving. And then it says, after leaving Succoth, this is in verse 20, they camped at Etham on the edge of the desert. By day the Lord went ahead of them in a pillar of cloud to guide them on their way, and by night in a pillar of fire to give them light so that they could travel by day or night. Neither the pillar of cloud by day nor the pillar of fire by night left its place in front of the people. And then jumping down to the next chapter, in verse 19, it says, then the angel of God who had been traveling in front of Israel's army withdrew and went behind them. The pillar of cloud also moved from in front and stood behind them, coming between the armies of Egypt and Israel. Throughout the night, the cloud brought darkness to one side and light to the other, so that neither went near the other all night long. So we don't know what this pillar of fire and this cloud of darkness was. And we don't know how long it lasted, whether it was just this experience or whether it continued while they're in the wilderness. It is mentioned again later, but later we don't know if it's referring back to this time or whether it's still happening. But nevertheless, it did happen. There was some sort of a manifestation there, and there is something which is a light. And light is very much a part of this event. There's light in the darkness and darkness in the light. So first you have light that's pushing back the darkness, and then you have darkness which is obscuring the light. And light's a really important theme throughout the scripture. If you look at some of the New Testament passages, Jesus, in fact, in John chapter 8, says that I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. And then in 2 Corinthians, it says, let light shine out of darkness. For the God who said, let light shine out of darkness, made his light shine in our hearts to give us the light of the knowledge of God's glory displayed in the face of Christ. And then many of you, I'm sure, remember from the Christmas story in Matthew chapter 4, it says, "The people living in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of the shadow of death, a light has dawned." And then also in John 1, there's a lot of discussion about light. And it says, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. The Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made. In him was life, and the life was the light of all mankind. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it." So I was mulling on this and thinking about this experience of light. And I was thinking, first of all, about how sometimes darkness obscures light. And let me tell you a story about how darkness obscured light in a personal failure on my part. This actually happened quite a few years ago. Joel was probably in junior high, I'm guessing, and I decided to take him fishing. And there was this stream that I had found way up in the hills south of Buckley, and I was up there actually hunting mushrooms, and I thought, I want to go back there and go fishing. So we went to try to find that stream. Turned out we couldn't get up to the place where we'd been, so I decided I would just drive around and find out where it came out, because I knew it had to come out somewhere. And after winding around, we crossed this stream. Thought, this must be it. So there was a nice place to park there. We parked, and we started fishing, and man, we were just, it was like nobody had ever fished there. Every time we'd come to a hole, we'd catch a couple of fish. And we'd fish for a little while, and we were down the stream a ways, and all of a sudden, out of the brush came a game warden. And, adrenaline starts flowing. He goes, came down. The first thing he wanted to do was look at my fishing pole. And he said, well, this is a prime area for people snagging salmon and steelhead, and this is a closed stream to all fishing. And I said, well, I thought it was such and such a stream. He said, no, that stream goes off a different direction. This is a different stream entirely, and this whole stream is completely closed to all fishing. So come with me. So he led us back through the brush. He was leading the way, and I'm thinking, I've got this thing of fish in my little bag here. There's the evidence. So I'm ashamed to say that as I walked along, I started slipping the fish out of my container and dropping them in the path because I wanted to mitigate the damage. And we got back to his car, and we talked for a while, and he didn't care anything about the trout or what we were doing. He was just worried about the salmon run and the steelhead, and people had been snagging them and stealing them. And we weren't supposed to fish there, but he didn't really care about the trout that I had now left all the way back in the brush. And so he didn't bring it up. He didn't talk to us anymore about that, and he gave us a warning and said, don't fish here anymore. But what I was doing as I was following him, I was at fault. I should have known. I should have looked carefully, checked the maps. I should have known where I was fishing. I should have known it wasn't closed. It was an accident. I wasn't intentionally doing it, but nevertheless, I was at fault. And in order to mitigate what my drama or pain or whatever I'd been trying to avoid, getting caught with the evidence. And I realize that sometimes our actions cause the light to be prevented from being in our own lives. And actions like that not only affect the world, but they affect our hearts as well. And in the smallest ways, when we refuse to live up and to be responsible and to resist the temptation to those sorts of things, we resist the light of God. Now let me tell you another one which was more of a success. We installed this sprinkler system in this building when we built it, and Don Guy and I actually put together the whole panel in there, and so I know everything about that alarm system in there. But the county still requires someone to come in every year and do an inspection. And about 10 years ago, we switched from using landlines to using cellular. And so we have a little box in there. It's a cellular transmitter that sends a signal to the monitoring company in Kirkland every day and says, yeah, there's no fire today. And when the very first fire inspector came and saw that box, he looked at it and he goes, I think the commercial ones are supposed to be red. I said, I don't know. I just told them who we were, and they sent me the box. I put it up. So I called the company, and they said, yeah, those are fine for commercial as well. I don't know why they told me that, but that's what they said. So for years, every time we get a new fire marshal, he'd kind of go, I don't know about that. So this time, in the fall, we had to have an inspection. New fire marshal, hadn't met him before. He was actually doing me a great favor. And he looked at that, and he goes, I think you're going to have to change that out. Well, these two units, one's residential and one's commercial, if you open the two boxes, the insides are exactly the same. I can't be positive, but they look exactly the same. Same little lights, same little connections, everything's exactly the same. The only difference is one's in a red box. And it's commercial. And the last I'd heard, it was going to cost me $500 to switch from that nice little brown box to one that was red. And I'm thinking, how much is a can of red spray paint? And so for several days, I had this discussion with God. I said, $500, $5, $500. And so I started just, rationalizing, yeah, it's the government, it's big business, and, we should sometimes make a stand and protest. And God reminded me of the parable to where they came and asked Jesus to pay the temple tax. Remember what he said? He said, whose image is on this dollar bill? If the government wants your dollar bill, give it to them. Fine. So I called the company and actually ended up with a guy that I worked with before who actually went to KM. And so after this long discussion, he said, well, that unit's only $200 and some. So it was about half the price of what I thought I was going to have, and he was here in a couple days. But I knew as soon as I crossed that line and said, it's God's money, it's not my money, I don't have to save every single penny of it for him, and this is the law of the land, I knew I'd done the right thing. But in our life, in your everyday life, you will constantly be tempted. And it's probably most of the time in little areas. I went to pick up a pizza last week, and I had a coupon, of course. And the coupon said it was $10 for the pizza, and it was a large. But really small print down below, it said $2 more if it was a family size. It was a new kid, I handed him the coupon, and he starts ringing up $10. And I could have just said, great, that's what he's going to charge me. But I said, hey, no, this is a family size. You need to charge me the extra $2. And he looked at me kind of stunned, like, why would you? But see, it's those points, I believe, in which we are tempted to let the darkness obscure the light. And it's in little things. We get pulled over, or we get stopped, or we get confronted, or someone says something to us at work, and immediately we defend ourselves. We want to hold up our defenses to stop anything bad from happening, whether it's cost, whether it's emotional damage, whether it's words. And it's those tiny little things, and Jesus refers to them as the foxes that get into the grapevines. It's the weeds that get into the harvest. It's those things that obscure the light, not only in our own life, but really sometimes to the world as well. The light also shines in the darkness. And I read you a bunch of passages there. So we are vehicles of the light. Jesus said he brings light into the world and he transfers it to us. And he said, you get to be my conveyors of light. And so not only do we have the opportunity to not allow light to be shaded, but we also have an opportunity to light to be expressed from us. And I don't know about you, but I feel like it's really a dark time right now. And statistically, it's not more evil than it ever has been in history, but I think it's because we are so exposed to so much constantly. I mean, my phone now rings when there's an Amber Alert, which is a good thing. I'm happy to know that. But I'm constantly finding out that there's things going on. There's graft and corruption in Africa. There was a shooting, I think, yesterday at a mosque. 10 people killed, and hurricanes and storms. And so there's this constant inundation of grim gloom, depression. And we have the privilege and the responsibility to bring light into this world of darkness. To them God has chosen to make known among the Gentiles the glorious riches of this mystery, which is Christ in you, the hope of glory. Colossians 1:27. It's a great verse. So we need to be people who are bringing hope into the place. This morning, or this week, I was looking at, there's a site called Good News website. You should all have that on your little toolbar there and go there every day. There was a girl who had just gotten married, and she and her husband had gone to the park to do their wedding pictures, and a little 5-year-old autistic girl went running up to her saying, "Cinderella, Cinderella." And, in the article talked about how, the bride was just crying and weeping that somebody would think she was a princess. And she, took pictures of it and put it on social media. And instantly a GoFundMe account raised up, and they raised $12,000 to send this little autistic girl to Disney World so she could meet more princesses. And, that's good news. That's good news. And I was thinking, if every one of us went to wherever we go Monday morning and had a story like that to bring to people around us, to start their day smiling, rather than walking in and saying, "Oh my gosh, you wouldn't believe what happened this morning. It's a horrible world we live in." What if we start bringing in hope? There have been billions of dollars that Christians have raised to take care of victims in Indonesia and in the hurricanes. We need to remember that stuff as well. Not just complain about all the bad things or the ways that things were missed. Let's start becoming more vehicles of hope to this world. And there's a lot of hope to express. The vast majority of people on this planet are not bad. The vast majority of them are good people. It's the few evil ones that stand out and that get all the attention. Let's be people who are vehicles of hope. There's hope in this present life. Jesus says that I've come that you may have life and live it to the full. You may have an abundant life. And there's another level of hope as well. And that is our eternal hope. The fact that we know that there is life after this, that we know that we are going to spend eternity together. And it's important to remind people of that. Now, let me say again, I've said many times before, sometimes you can use words which may seem like words of hope, which are not words of hope. Like if somebody has just lost a child, you don't want to say, well, you can always have more kids. That's not a message of hope. But you can stand with them and hug them and say, I'm so sorry for your loss. Or, if someone's, you don't want to say something like, well, he's in a better place. That's not hopeful to me if I've just lost someone I love. But if there's someone that's struggling with life and really difficult, you can say, you know what, there is going to be a time when these things aren't going to happen. People are frustrated with the politics of our world. You can say, you know what, there's going to be a time when this earth is going to be ruled by Jesus. It's going to be an amazing place. We're not going to have an island the size of Texas of plastic in the ocean. We have hope to look forward to. And we need to be conveyors of that hope, that light. So God used a pillar of fire to lead the Israelites through that journey. And he said, you're it. You're the new pillar of fire. You're leading the world. It's not going to be the politicians. It's not going to be the movie stars. It's not going to be football players. It's going to be you. You're the pillar of light. Be the pillar of light. Don't let your light be put under a bushel. Let your light shine so that the world can see it. Let me leave you with one last passage from 1 Peter. Praise be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. In his great mercy, he has given us new birth into a living hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead, and into an inheritance that can never perish, spoil, or fade. This inheritance is kept in heaven for you. In this all of you greatly rejoice, that now for a little while you may have to suffer grief in all kinds of trials. Stand with me and let me conclude with the benediction. Now may that pillar of light spring up in your life so that you may be an illustration of the hope that we have in Jesus Christ today, tomorrow, and forever. Amen.